How is your back and your brain related? And it's a great question. I got asked the other day, and I don't know, it's something that's very interesting. I thought I would share it with everybody today. So we may do a little bit of drawing here, but we're going to ultimately talk about how the back is related to the brain, how the brain is related to the back, and why both of them are important to actually sustain long-term health. So I'm Dr. Jeff Cumro, and over the past 15 years, I've been blessed to work with over 5,000 patients through a combination of chiropractic, functional medicine, functional neurology. And with that, it gives some weird context because, we see things from concussions to, balance issues to, autoimmunity, different things like that. So we're working with a variety of different types of patients, and we see some different links here. And that's kind of where one of these questions came from, is how are the brain and the back health related? And it's very, very important. So let's see, my computer's doing weird stuff here. So bear with me here as it kind of goes through what it needs to go through. So when we look at the back health, like everybody said, all right, chiropractors are back doctor. And that's not really the case. What chiropractors do is we improve communication between the body and the brain. That allows for a decreased stress response. And when we have that, the brain has the information it needs. So all the signals come from the body, right? The sensations, for the most part, come from the body. When we have proper sensation, it feeds the brain the information of where we're at in space, what type of environment we're in, and what type of output it needs to put out to accomplish the goals that you set forth. Now, the other thing that it provides is feedback. Did you accomplish that goal? If you take a drink of water, did you actually hit your mouth, or did you throw it over your shoulder? If you threw it over your shoulder, you know that you missed and you can take another attempt, right? So it's very, very important to have this communication clear between those two areas. As we get that, like I said, it reduces the stress response. So it gives the brain better information. What Roger Sperry, who was a PhD back in the day, what he found is 90% of the nutrition to the brain comes from movement of the spine. If we don't have areas of the spine moving as fluidly as it should, it decreases the nutrition provided to the brain. That goes along with all the other sensation and things that the brain needs. Different parts of the brain are connected to different areas of the body in different ways. So, for example, when we have a balance change, what happens? If the brain balance centers are thrown off, it tells us that we're in a place that we're not really in. So, if let's see, when we're normal, we're here. We're pretty well balanced, right? So that gives us a pretty good idea of where we're at in space. We know where we're at. However, we can feel like we are moving this way even when we're in this type of position or this way or whatever else. It doesn't matter. We can feel like we're thrown off. If you get vertigo, you get that spinning sensation even though you are not spinning. It's the brain sending different signals. Now, what kind of impact does that have on the body? So if we are to look at this type of scenario where we're leaning back like this, what are we going to do? We're going to tighten up the muscles in here to basically prevent ourselves from falling backward. So what we end up is a scenario like this. We have somebody who's hunched forward. Commonly seen, right? We see it a lot. If you walk through the grocery stores, you'll see a lot of people leaning on their carts. If you watch somebody walk down the street, you'll see a lot of the older people are kind of hunched forward, and in this type of scenario, a lot of times that's because they feel like they're falling backwards, so they compensate by tightening these front muscles that lead to this type of scenario. It can happen in any way, though. If you feel like you're falling forward, you're going to tighten these muscles back here. So it can happen where you get somebody that's really, really upright. It's not as common, but it does happen. So that brain is very, very important on all of these signals down here. And this is why this is important. If we get into a scenario like this, what happens? We get a lot of tightness in the musculature here. We get an increase in curvature in that lower back. It jams all of this stuff back here together, and we end up developing arthritis and different things like that. So it actually puts a lot of extra strain. Short term, you end up with muscle spasms, you end up with pain. Longer term, you can end up with arthritis and different things like that if that is something that is not fixed over a period of time. Now, if we have a scenario where we are upright, but we end up with an increased curvature to keep ourselves upright. Stereotypically, what we're going to see is if we have the lower back increased arch, we're going to have an increased kyphotic arch there to keep everything balanced out too. So we end up with more of an S curve. This throws things off too. So the body feeds back into the brain. It tells the brain that we've got extra stuff going on down here. We lose that motion in here, and with that, we lose that stimulation up to those parts of the brain. So our balance receptors may not be getting as much information. Our areas in the frontal lobe might not be getting as much information, because this is going to kick on the stress response. Stereotypically, when we end up in that, we end up in more of a stress response. If you want to do a test on this, if you stand up and you hunch forward, so let me get into a position, hopefully you can see this here. So if you stand up and you hunch forward, stand like this for a few minutes and see how you feel afterward. It's going to make it harder for you to take a deep breath in. Your heart rate's probably going to go up because your oxygenation is going to go down. It just stimulates that stress response. Now, as you shift and you end up in a position like this, it makes it easier. It gives us that, a lot of people say stand up straight, you get that confidence and all of that. The confidence will go with it, but a lot of it is that oxygenation gives that relaxed response. And a lot of times that's what we see, is that relaxation response plays a big role in this. Now, what do most of us do throughout the day? Stereotypically, sedentary jobs, right? Sedentary jobs put us in this type of position. So say we've got our chair here. We sit in a position that increases the lumbar curve, increases that kyphotic curve. Our head ends up out front. And this leads to a lot of extra strain, not only up in here. Headaches are very common with a lot of extra sitting. But when you go to stand up, you have this increased curvature here. Like I said, you're jamming all these things back here together. You start with that breakdown. You start with lower back pain. So our brain can drive this through this whole mechanism over here, or our body, like the things that we're doing throughout the day, can drive changes in the brain through the things we're doing. Now, they say sitting is the new smoking, right? Part of that is because we're not getting any exercise while we do that. The other part of that is this type of response. We stimulate that stress response. We get that lower back pain. Drives up in there. We get muscle spasms. We lose our balance over time. So it's very, very intricately integrated in there. And if we're working on one area, we have to understand the global impacts of that. And that's one thing that frustrates me. We see people that come in on 5 different medications, that one doctor put them on this medication, another doctor put them on this medication, another one over here, and they're not paying attention to how all of those things intermingle, and it's causing other problems, other symptoms, other issues with things. So when we start to look at how all of this stuff goes through and impacts all of the other stuff, that is holistic healthcare. We have to understand the impacts of what we're doing, how it affects every other system on the body, and that's ultimately why I continue to study this stuff, why I find this stuff so fascinating, is it's all linked together, and it's kind of cool when we actually see it. Now, this is terrible drawing. I hope you got the gist of it. If you do have any questions, as always, reach out to me. I value those questions. I want you to understand this, because if you understand it, you're likely to get the progress that you need to see the outcomes that you want. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention, and I'll catch you on next week's video.